Hey, what's up, YouTube? Welcome to Play It Painted Live. We are about to get started here, and it's one of those rare weeks where I actually had a little bit of time before the show. A lot of times I'm scrambling to get downstairs. I gotta clean cat boxes, take out the trash, put the baby to sleep, and all that other jazz. But tonight I had a little bit of time, so I decided I would start painting up some of the intended projects of the night. So, what are we looking at here? We are looking at Darkspace Rin Farah. So I'm back painting Relic Knights after a stint painting some Arena Rex. I will have to get back to painting Arena Rex at another time, but I figured for tonight's topics, Relic Knights would be a good thing to be painting while we're discussing these topics. And also, Rin here has been sitting on my painting table for some time, and I really haven't given her the attention she needs. So here's Darkspace Rin Farah. This is where I'm at with her, waiting, giving it a little bit of minute, a little while here while the sepia wash dries. But you can see I've done some of the work on the base and the hair, and I'm working on skin right now. Let me see if I can get her to focus. There we go. So you can see some of the detail on her face about to come in. There you go. Very cool model. And I'm having a lot of fun painting her up. And hopefully I will get to field her. Now, I did actually auction off my my No Empire Kickstarter set as part of Extra Life. So I no longer have a No Empire force, but she is a Darkspace model and a Void model, so I will get to field her with Harbonath, my Void Knight, if should I so choose to field her that way. So again, this is what I'm working on tonight. I'm going to try to keep her somewhat close to the box art here. Mainly because I don't know the reference. I don't know what she's cosplaying as, and I sent my brother a message to see, but no, I guess he's not around. And I was just kind of putting it out there too to see if anybody else. But if you guys know who Rin Farah is cosplaying as, that would be helpful. But yeah, I'm going to try to stick fairly close to that. So up next, I'm going to do a little bit. I'm going to do the lipstick here, and I've got to do the lipstick off camera because it's just really fine detail work, and it's very hard for me to hold her out in front of the camera to do this. Well, I can try. We can see how it goes. So normally I take Sunset Red and just add a little bit of the flesh to it. It looks like that's not going with a little bit of pink today, and that's not quite dark enough. So I'm going to come back, and I am going to mix a little of this Sunset Red back into it. Mix a little bit of Sunset Red into this pink. Just to give her, I just want to give the lips just a little bit more color than straight pink. I think pink kind of just fades a little too far out. And her, I'm going with light flesh as the highlight, so her skin is going to be already fairly pink. So this should blend reasonably well. I'm just painting in some lips here. Yeah, still not quite enough color there. But, you know, I don't want her to look like I don't want her to look a little too... What's the word I'm looking for? I don't want the lips to be bright red. I think that's silly. Even for anime. It's just not the style, because even in anime they don't really, lips aren't very prominently featured to begin with. on most of the characters. But I do like to add just a little bit of that pink shade here to the lips. The wash itself is starting to dry down a bit, so I can come in and start to highlight some of this. In fact, that's a little light. It's a little too light of a transition. So I'm going to actually try to add a little bit of basic skin tone to my mix. See if I can end up with something a little bit more to the tone I want. So with male models, I do try to stay fairly fair-skinned, and I will eventually get up to this light flesh color, this very pink color, but it's just a matter of layering up that way. All right, so once again, I want to thank you guys for joining Play It Painted Live. If you are in the YouTube feed or the Google Plus feed, let us know what you're painting tonight or what you should be painting, maybe what you're thinking about painting. Building something, let us know what project you're working on. That's kind of the focus of the show, is to make, is that I'm working on hobby stuff. And I figured, hey, if I'm working on hobby stuff and somebody out there watching this works on hobby stuff too, then, the show has a little bit more of a purpose than just me rambling about stuff, and inviting some really cool people on to talk about stuff as well. Tonight, I'm hoping that we have a couple of guests on. One of the guys I'm hoping to hop on will be Mark Dieter, who is the ninja most famous for, right at the moment, the Questing Knights podcast. He also has the Through the Breach podcast for Malifaux. And Mark and I have gotten to know each other a little bit more over the course of doing this ninja work here. And I think he has some really cool things to say. He has some cool ideas, and let's bring him on the show and get to know Mark a little bit. We're gonna discuss a couple of topics, again, fairly relevant here to Relic Knights. We're going to talk about the organized play documents that have just recently come out. When I say recently, I mean like the past day. But yeah, we're going to talk about stuff like that. We're going to talk about something that I'm calling gamer saturation. This is kind of an interesting topic about the current state of miniature gaming. So anyway, just going to do a little bit more work here on Rin Farah. Once again, welcome to Play It Painted Live, you guys. Let us know what you're painting or what you should be painting. So some recent news for me this past week. Not a whole lot happened, actually. This past weekend, believe it or not, no gaming for me. And in fact, Tactical Tuesday was a bust. Tactical Tuesday last night. Just didn't have many people interested in going, and a lot of that is because, like, college students, like say Andrew or Richard, they're cramming for exams. We've got some other folks that have had to put in a lot of overtime at work. So last night was a bust. That's okay. That allowed me to do a little bit more painting, Arena Rex painting last night. And so tonight it was like, well, could use a break here from the Arena Rex, which, believe me, those models are beautiful and they're very fun to paint. But, you need to change it up every now and then. So that's what we decided to do. And that's what I'm doing tonight. Whoa. You can hear some messages coming in. Okay, so, whoa. Let me reload the YouTube feed here. Let me see if we have any comments so far. Okay, a couple of comments. Cameron Zani says, what's up? Painting Praetorian Swordsman. Yeah, I saw some of that stuff on the List Them All You Play Facebook group, Cameron. It looks really cool. I know that you've been working on some stuff, which I assume is Scorn. And I know Canvas has also been working on some Scorn stuff. So, and let me say this, Cameron. I think I think recently your skills have gotten a little bit better. I'm not sure. Well, yeah, definitely your painting skills have gotten a little bit better. And I don't know. I just noticed it. I think your models are coming out much. They're coming out much stronger, more vibrant. The colors, and I don't know what you might have changed there, but that's the impression I get. The basing too looks a little bit better. I don't know. It's cool, man. It's good to see, and I was really kind of encouraged by that, inspired by that. So, obviously, I can also get better too, and that's one of the things that I constantly trying to work on is how can I myself get a little bit better at painting stuff, and so that's why I paint all the time, and painting a few different lines like the Soda Pop line and Arena Rex and the Cypher stuff, and I feel it gives me a little bit of breadth of experience. It's also very fun, and it keeps painting very fresh. The Privateer stuff, I was a big fan of painting. I painted up a Scorn starter. Most of the stuff that I painted in terms of Privateer has been Retribution stuff and Pirate stuff, which is all very fun. So let me get this layer down, and I'm going to invite our two guests for the evening on. If you Cameron, if you get a little more interested in our topic of discussion, you can shoot me a message and let me know that you want to hop on as well, and throw your 2 cents into the mix, because it'd be cool to get some feedback from a few different folks. So let me just get this layer of flesh on. You can see it coming in here. Pretty bright. I don't want it to be that contrasting, so I'm gonna try to pull it back a little bit. But this model has a lot of delicate little features to her. She's really cool. I like the original Ren Fair sculpt, but this Darkspace one is super fun also. So I'm really enjoying painting all this stuff up so far. Maybe you can tell me what she's cosplaying as, Cameron, because I don't know. I'm just enjoying painting her. Okay. So there's that layer. We'll let that dry for a minute. And I'm going to shoot some invites over to a couple of my friends, and we'll introduce them as they hop on. Once again, welcome to Play It Painted Live, folks. If you are painting or working on stuff, let us know in the comments. If you're not working on something and you feel like you should be, let us know what you should be working on, because I like to hear that too. It's interesting to hear what people have on their tables or looking to build, paint, or play. All right, so here we go. I'm going to go back to the painting here. I don't know that I need to do that many more layers on this model, because I don't want her to look like too drastic. But I do want her to have nice smooth flesh, and that does require multiple thin layers. Actually, I'll pull you guys over here a little bit more. There we go. So yeah, it's been a pretty quiet week, but this weekend, if you're in the Southern California area, this is a great weekend to break out your Relic Knights stuff and get to playing. First off, we have a 35-point tournament going on at the Montclair. This is going to be Saturday, and this is going to start at 4 p.m. at the Montclair. It's a 3-round tournament, 35 points, single list. Games are going to be played to 90 minutes or 8 VP, whatever happens first. And there is a painting contest bundled in there. So whatever you're playing is actually going to be what you enter into the painting contest. I think that's kind of cool too, because it affects your list building as well. You know, do you want to try to win the painting contest or score a little bit more points for having really cool models, which is going to be my goal, because I know I'm pretty much going to get worked in the tournament. So my goal is to field some of the coolest models that I currently have in my RK collection. Or, you know, do you build the power list at 35, which I don't know. I mean, there's some cool stuff you can do at 35, but I don't know if there's a single power list that is just dominating at 35. And you guys can share your experiences there too. You know, if you've seen something that just at 35 points just mauls people. But I don't know. I don't think there's any like one dominating thing at 35 points at the moment.
You totally know someone's going to figure it out and have some sort of...
yeah, it'll be a little while before that happens. But yeah, I maybe at 35. So that's what's going on Saturday. On Sunday, down at Eddie's Games, this is in San Diego, California, there's going to be a Relic Knights open demo and play day. That starts at 11 a.m. and that pretty much runs all day, so 11 to 7 down there at E's Games. And so that should be fun as well. You know, that's a little more casual environment. You might show up there, play a couple of games, maybe kind of learn more about the game. If you're not ready for a tournament environment, that might be the stop for you. So anyway, bottom line, this weekend is a great weekend to be playing some Relic Knights if you are in the Southern California region. And the cool thing is I'm not involved in hosting either event. So I actually get to participate in both events. And I'm really looking forward to it. So, okay, welcome to the show. We've got a couple of guests on tonight. I'm going to go ahead and introduce you guys, and you guys can tell me what you're working on, because it looks like both of you guys are working on stuff at the moment. So I'm going to start with Mark Dieter, who is a fellow ninja and a podcast host. He hosts the Questing Knights podcast, which a lot of you folks that are getting into Relic Knights should be listening to. What's up, Mark?
All's well. How you got it, guys?
Doing well.
I am working on removing mold lines from Super Dungeon Explorer because I'm a lazy git.
Some hatchlings going right there.
Yep, because I tend to prime and then come back and hit the mold lines. So a little bit of cleanup.
Cool, that makes sense. I mean, a lot of times you think you've hit all the mold lines, and then you prime the model, and then a bunch more pop out.
Yep. Do the first pass, and then come back through, and at that point, you just can do a little, in this case, brush on white, and make sure your base coat's even, make sure there's no mold lines that are going to stick out, and it works surprisingly well.
Cool.
So.
Awesome. Well, welcome to the show for the first time, Mark.
Yes, because it's late.
And also, what was that?
It's late. What do you expect?
Yeah, this is very late
morning
for you. But back to our time zone here, we also have Jill. You guys that regularly watch our show know that Jill has been on our show several times now. What's up, Jill? What are you working on?
I am working a kind of a proxy model for Super Dungeon Explorer. She's going to be replacing the Druid Bear.
Okay, cool. Is
Yeah.
that looks like an impact miniature? Is that where that's from?
It is.
Yeah, it was actually somebody on the Facebook Chibi group had suggested right before Adepticon last year, and Dropping names. Um, is it Tom Anders actually decided to offer up. Jill, do you have Kitsune there?
Yeah, I do. There she is.
Offer up Kitsune in her human form and the fox as a package deal to do as a replacement bear and druid. So I had the opportunity to pick them up at Adepticon last year, and
Then when you won my Super Dungeon Explorer, you decided you would get me to paint them.
so
Cool. So I'm working on my commission right now.
Nice. That's okay. I work on commissions on this feed all the time. It's actually kind of a bonus because I tell my clients that if they want to see their stuff being painted, they just have to tune in. And there you go. They can actually see their stuff being painted. Cool. Okay. Well, yeah, I'm a fan of Impact. I recently picked up their Big Lebowski set of miniatures. I have not painted those yet.
Okay.
They're in my queue. Unfortunately, as far as priorities go, they kind of fall behind.
So you did not get any of the Blood Bowl miniatures?
Not lately. I painted an ogre team for Marty. I want to say
Octave, I'm very disappointed because they have. Because I convinced Tom Anders this last Kickstarter because I wanted to do a Meerkat Goblin team.
Okay.
And use platypuses as the
cutest freaking
secret weapons.
In the world.
So he went ahead and made up for that Kickstarter, based on my suggestion, a team that is 20 platypuses, including the four secret weapons. Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you were you're the one
who suggested it.
Very cool.
So.
Very cool.
And it kind
good.
of
Now had I known that, I might have actually went in for that Kickstarter. But yeah, I'm a fan of Impact. Love their what's it called? Trollcast.
Yes.
I guess is their resin.
Yeah, there's actually a few companies that are doing Trollcast now. The guys that are doing the Ethereum game are actually also using that Spincast. It's a really interesting process.
Okay.
I mean, I've had very few issues with bad castings coming out of Impact. The only problem, I will say, is that the mold release that Ed uses is a little on the heavy side.
Oh, it's such a pain in the butt to get off of middies.
Mm-hmm.
I had to put these ones in mean green to get it off of them.
It's a very aggressive mold release, which is probably why his casting rate is so high. However, it leaves the end user having issues.
I see. Okay.
Small price to pay for an awesome mini, though.
Yeah, I Arena Rex I've been painting, and you have to get rid of the mold release on those too, because that's a resin line.
Mm-hmm.
But I haven't had any issues with it so far. Cool. Speaking of Kickstarters, since we're just talking nonsense at the moment, I want to point out that I recently backed a Kickstarter, even though I had this secret vow not to back anything else, at least until the end of the calendar year. But this one jumped out at me, and I had to go in. And this Kickstarter was the Return of the Dragon board game Kickstarter. So basically, this is a officially licensed Bruce Lee and Brandon Lee game, and it's a kung fu, sort of along the veins of a Fistful of Kung Fu, the game by Osprey, but this is made by a different manufacturer. And this is a board game for 1 to 5 players, and it does actually reference a number of some of your most memorable Kung Fu stars, for example. So Bruce Lee, Brandon Lee, obviously, they're in it. There's a Jackie Chan character. You've got Cynthia Rothrock coming out of left field. That's a cool addition. Just the fact that she's a playable character in the game. You've got Bolo Young as a villain, which is phenomenal. My one complaint is that they do not have my best friend in the whole world, Timok, from Barry Gordy's The Last Dragon, and no Shogun of Harlem. Hopefully they get added to the game at some point, though.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I figured, hey, I'm knee deep in projects. What's another Kickstarter gonna set me back? Especially considering I'm expecting it to be probably about a year late, anyways. The way these things run, I figure 6 to 12 months late is fair. So I figure I have time.
Yeah, the first one I ever saw of theirs was the Fairy Tale Princess ones.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually I'd started to. Okay, habitually I'm one of those people. I will go in on a Kickstarter, really heavy, and then get cold feet. So I'm one of those idiots who's dropping out the last day. And I did just because they had a previous Kickstarter they still hadn't delivered. I did go in on Last Dragon after you showed it to me. I hemmed and hawed and decided they did have a candy and cola tie-in.
They do have a candy and cola, that's right.
So I did go ahead and go in for that. But I get kind of weary about some of these people who start new Kickstarters before they're delivered anything.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That's a super solid point too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very, very leery of that, but again, Bruce Lee, gotta paint it. You can play the Crow in the game. The Crow, gotta do that.
Yeah,
I'll wait for that.
Sometimes you have to take a chance.
Yeah,
and I think this was a good one for it. So speaking of Kickstarters, Jill and I actually got the awesome privilege the other day. And Jillian, I would like to thank you again for carrying me during this interview.
Yep.
What? Yep. Really?
You're welcome. Not a problem. That's what friends do, dude.
Miss Squee is Brian Steele. Oh my God, he made Denegra.
Shut up. Don't make fun of me.
We got to interview Brian Steele. Probably not a name that a lot of gamers know, but I've become really good friends with the guy in the years of doing the podcasts. And I think a lot of people would know his work if you played War Machine at all. I mean, some of the characters like Reinhold was completely his. I think he was the one that ended up making Denegra into Haley's sister. So he's been very active in doing a lot of the Privateer stuff, and on into like Dark Age, Wrath of Kings coming up. The original Right, I believe, was his. But he is doing his own Kickstarter for an RPG project, which, sometimes when your friends are doing stuff, you've got to help them just because they're freaking awesome guys. So,
yep.
I do kind of highly recommend, guys, if you're looking for a little bit different RP system, do me a favor and go look at Brian's Seventh Crown Kickstarter. And I actually made it easy. You can either go crown.geekgirlweekly.com or crown.questionicepodcast.com. And Jill, I do believe the first third of that interview went out on your feed today.
It did. I actually posted my podcast late last night. But if you guys are interested in finding out more about Brian or whatever, you can check out my podcast, just geekgirlweekly.com. It's on the front page there. Go take a listen. It's a really interesting interview. I really enjoyed it. And
like I said, she saved my bacon. She saved my bacon.
And next week I'll be putting out another episode with more information about his Kickstarter as well.
Cool. Okay. Very cool. Okay, I am painting in the orange parts of this model. Want to welcome everybody that's just tuning in. Welcome to Play It Painted Live. Let us know what you're painting or what you should be painting. I'm gonna load some comments here really quick, and then we're gonna talk some Relic Knights because that's what I want to talk. Damn it, Relic Knights! Super excited. Okay, let's see. Okay, so Cameron answered my question. She's cosplaying as Yoko from the anime Gurren Lagann. I don't even know if I'm saying that right, but thank you for that, Cameron. I try and show up Saturday, but I still have only have the Shattered Sword starter. Also, I don't think the arcade tourney scene is for me. Hearing stories of games ending in 30 minutes with no models attacking seems a bit too weird. Weird is a safe word to use. I like punching things and flipping lots of cards. Hey, that's legit, man. I would say, you know what, though, Cameron? Two things. I'm bringing all my Relic Knights, and this is a 35-point tournament, so if you do change your mind and you want to borrow something, let me know. I will have, I am already lending out a few different armies to folks, so don't even sweat it, man. It's cool. If you just want to get in a few games, and at 35 points, the games will go pretty quick. So let's see. Larry Mendel hopped on. What's up, gang? Painting an archer, wolf, and a jackalope. Cool. Thanks, man. Thanks for tuning in. Haven't seen you in a while, Larry. Be cool to run into you maybe at CQ sometime. So, very cool. And so, yeah, Cameron, let me know if you do change your mind. Again, this tournament starts at 4 p.m., so you have actually the better part of the day to decide. And I'm sure some folks are going to be there early just to get together. They're probably going to be playing some other games beforehand. So anyway, go check it out if you want to, and it sounds like it's going to be a good time. So, okay, so anyway, on to one of the topics for tonight, and it is the hot off the presses here. We're talking about the Relic Knights Organized play documents that just came out from Soda Pop Miniatures and Ninja Division. So, one of you guys want to give me the brief on this? Let's go with Mark. How about you, Mark?
I have not actually had a chance to look at it yet.
Okay, cool. Well, then this might be the perfect.
I had an older cat decide that last night and this morning was her time to pass on, so I didn't get a chance to do it. But I will say, guys, if you're coming to Adepticon in March, get to know these two documents because these will be the official Adepticon event documents. So they're real.
Cool. Okay. Well, yeah. What Ninja Division put out is they actually put out 3 documents, and they're in the Soda Pop store, and they're free to download. One of them is the basic Ninja Division event guidelines. So this is kind of an overview type document. What types of things are expected from the event organizer, say the Ninja, what types of things are expected from the participants, and just some basic guidelines on how to conduct and run the 3 different types of events that Ninja Division is focusing in on. So tournaments, demos, and campaign or leagues are what this document overviews.
And of course, it should go without saying that this is for Relic Knights, this is Super Dungeon, this is Eldorado, Anima, etc., etc., etc.
So that's the first one, and I went through that document. There's, in my opinion, there's really nothing in there that's shocking. It's all basic. I mean, if you've been, I'm sorry.
It's a lot of common sense.
Yes, that's probably the best way to put it. I mean, nothing in there surprises me if you've been gaming for any period of time and active in a gaming community, and you know how to conduct yourself in a reasonable manner at tournaments and public events. You should find absolutely nothing in that document to surprise you. It is nice, though, to see, even though we all should know better, it is nice to see when companies put together things like, okay, here's an example of a warning system, or here's how you deal with a difficult player, or a player that is disruptive or disrespectful at your events. It's just good to see that that a publisher would include a basic code of conduct in their organized play documents. So that's one of the documents that they put out. The other two documents are specific tournament documents for Relic Knights. So there is the Established Order document, and then there's the Endless Hunger document. And the quick and dirty of it is that the Established Order may be more regarded as, say, the less direct competitive type of tournament. This is maybe a little bit more comprehensive in that this includes scores for things like painting and sportsmanship, whereas the Endless Hunger document is more of a direct competition style of document. And that's. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm just thinking, when I had to submit the events for Adepticon, Deke gave me just the brief rundown. The more competitive of the two, and I don't remember which one's which. The names are just too similar for me to
the Endless Hunger is the more competitive document.
The one, at least at the time I submitted it for Adepticon, so about a month and a half ago, the thing that really surprised me was that it was a 2-list 50-point format, faction independent. I don't know if they fixed that. I don't know if they fixed that in the official document, but Deke confirmed to me at the time that at least there was some consideration that you could bring a 50-point Shattered Sword and a 50-point Void if you wanted.
Now, I went through the documents. One of them does call out single faction, and the other one does not. I can't tell you off the top of my head which one is which.
The more competitive one is not single faction, and I think it's more interesting just for the lack of the word, because if you don't look at them as a set, you're very likely to miss that distinction. When you're
That's a good point. Yeah, in fact, you're right.
Just take a second to look
right now
and see what the differences are, because that one, like I said, I went back to Deke and said, "You missed a word," and he said, "No, Mark, I did not." So,
guys, I lost my paint.
I
lost my paint.
Uh-oh.
I'm not gonna say anything.
Really sure what to say about that? Sorry. Yes. No, that's a good distinction. In fact, you're right. I did pick up on that when I was reading through. I just didn't remember which one it was, whether or not. But looking at the Endless Hunger format right now, that is where it is omitted. Single faction is included in the
Established
what was that called?
Enforcing
order. Established order.
Yes.
Yeah.
See, like I said, they're just
single faction is called out.
Too similar for me to.
They are pretty similar, and the one I'm always going to forget is Established Order. I will always remember Endless Hunger for some reason. That makes sense to me, but Established Order is a little too similar. So yes, for both types of tournaments, you bring two 50-point lists, and the other thing that's interesting to note is you do your hero villain and you determine scenario, or scenarios determined for you, and then you're going to pick one of your two 50-point lists, place it face down in front of you, and then you and your opponent will simultaneously reveal your lists. That's a little bit different than how we've been, at least locally here, how we've been playing our games. And we've been playing, you determine your list first, and then you do your scenarios, and hopefully you have built enough balance into your list to account for a number of different situations. So I'm of two minds about this because, like myself, I was playing Malifaux V1, V1.5, and that was where you do determine your objectives, your strategies before you build your list. And that was kind of cool in some ways, in that you can customize your crew to match your scenario. Some of the downsides to that, though, were that some people felt that you could buy your way out of situations, especially if you're playing a faction that had a strong number of counters to it, say guild. And again, I'm sorry, I'm talking Malifaux here. If you folks watching don't follow Malifaux, but that was one of the downsides to that. So then they came up with hiring pools and so forth. So that's where we came from. When we started playing Relic Knights, it was more, let's build a balanced 50-point list, flip our scenarios, and then figure out how to work that list to accomplish these scenarios.
Octave, I guess the question I have for you, because I'm looking at this as, I'm not a War Machine player, even though I want to be, but the War Machine having the stronger tournament document, with it being the living document. There's just a couple things I'm wondering. It seems to me in War Machine you present both lists to your opponent, so that there's that list chicken of, this is the list I need to deal with this set of scenarios, but I then can't deal with, list A. So there's some of that, metagaming going on before you even choose the list. Do we have to present our list to our opponent, or is that not in the document?
You do have to present your list to the opponent, but you only have to present the one that you're playing.
So you don't need to show both and then make the choice.
Right.
So you're going in blind, not knowing what the opponent's bringing, unless you've scouted.
So again, this is another interesting thing, and I honestly don't know how I feel about it until we've played it that way. Again, like locally, it's always been, well, you can bring two lists, but since you don't know what the scenarios are, it's better off that you put balance in both lists instead of, I'm looking at this from, say, for example, a Cersei speed circuit perspective, and I'm like, okay, I've got a bunch of fast models, and I can make a really fast list, say with a Amalia build, and give everybody feint. Or I can build say a Suicide Queen list that's a little more tanky, a little bit more combative. And so I can build these lists towards their strengths, and then sit down at the table, determine our scenarios, and then I can pick which one will be more favorable for me. That sounds really cool as an upside. As a downside, though, it does make me a little concerned that, hey, if you have a large pool of models, a wide access to models, that you may have a little bit of an advantage here.
Okay. Now, the other question I guess I have is Privateer, going back to War Machine Hordes. If it's a two-list format, you very often hear it as a divide and conquer, a one, which, as I'm understanding it, and of course the War Machine players can yell at me, is that means you have to play each list at least one time.
Yeah.
Can I, in Relic Knights, am I forced to play each list?
From what I'm reading,
can I bring
no.
two and only play one?
Yeah, from what I'm reading, you do not have to play both. Again, I've only read through the documents a couple of times today, but and in fact, I can see if no, see, there is no distinction. You don't have to play both lists over the course of the event.
Okay.
So
that's not forcing you to bring two lists then?
No, you can show up with one list and be fine and play that one list all day long.
Which is great if you're traveling.
Yeah.
If you are flying to an event and you only have space, in your suitcase to bring one black diamond list, it's actually kind of nice. You don't have to bring two, and
Yeah,
When
it's
you're only risking one army of damage rather than two.
okay. One of the things I will point out too in this section of the documents is I'm going to remember it. Establish order. That the establish order document does actually call out to play a single faction.
Okay.
And I think the reason why establish order calls it out is because I think they're worried about baby seal clubbing or poaching. One of the concerns that I had to begin with was, if you have if you went in on this Kickstarter, for example, and you have 6 factions, and you are like, oh well, everybody's a new player right now.
Have 6 factions with a Kickstarter? what kind of psychotic person?
What kind of person would ever do that?
Who does that, really? Your local group is everybody's brand new, and so it's like, hey, let's play this. Let's play the more casual format. You show up with your giant case full of 6 factions, and you're like, oh yeah, I'll just pick the exact counter to it. What are you playing? Oh, you're gonna play. You only have Doctrine. Well, I guess I'll play my Magnus list, and I will Esper Thief on you all day. So that document does actually call out that they need to be from a single faction, and I appreciate that they make the distinction there. So okay, so yeah, but the bring two 50-point lists is included in both documents. It's not required for either. There are also some rules about your model requirements as well. It's pretty standard fare. Just making sure that the models represent or closely represent what you intend for them to represent, and that you don't have more than 25% of your army consisting of alternate models. So I appreciate that. I don't think there's nothing in that section really surprised me. One of the things that there's actually 2 different alternate models I would like to use. For example, I'm really, as I'm painting her, I'm really liking this Rinfera as opposed to the standard Rinfera. So she may show up in my regular Cersei instead of being played as a Darkspace model, because I like the model. Another thing I'm looking at doing is fielding Candy Rush instead of Cordelia Clean when I field that Radiant Unique model. Not because I don't like Cordelia Clean. It's just, if I want to run a Candy, and Candy list, kind of want that 4th model to also be Candy. So yeah. Again, nothing really shocking in that section.
Now, Octave, does it call out painted battles? 3-color minimum or anything?
It actually, I was going to get to that, and it in the Endless Hunger, the competitive document, it does not call out a painting requirement. However, I will get the name of this document, the Establish Order. I'm going to say it like 20 times tonight. So in the Establish Order document, it does call out that models should be painted and based. Now that's interesting because this is an official format. So, I don't think casual players need to get too worried about, hey, I'm a casual player and I don't even know how to paint. Are you saying that I can't play in the casual event because I don't have painted models? And I would point out that this is one official format. This is probably not going to be the case when we're when you're running gaming for a group that might have just started and maybe hasn't even started to paint their models. Probably just going to run something similar but not have the painting requirement in there.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say, because I know there's people that just don't care for painting, so they end up playing with all white minis, right? So it would be... I think it all depends on what sort of tournament or event you're running. It makes sense for big events like the ones that we're going to be running at Adepticon to be painting required. But then, like, just at your local hobby store, I think it's really dependent on what the sort of vibe is in the group.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Check with your local ninja. Make sure, some of them may have a little bit laxer rules on conversions, on proxies, on painting. If you're going to a convention, just let everyone know. If you are putting a model down on the table at Adepticon, it has to be painted. That is the Adepticon rule. The Adepticon will take over for Endless Hunger. So, yes, Adepticon will not let you. We're not supposed to let you play with unpainted models because it's a hobby. It is a hobby event. So,
I was just about to ask you, Mark, if how often do you call out painting required, and is that normal for you?
I don't tend to, because there's always people who, especially when you're, around here. We're about 4 hours from Adepticon, so about this time of year you start getting all the primers. So people are trying lists. Proxying models that haven't come out yet but are on the release schedule. So you tend to give them a little bit more leeway just because the model isn't out yet or it just came out and they haven't had time to paint it. You hope that everyone will take the time to paint because it's always nicer if you have a fully painted army to sit down against somebody else who's at least attempted to paint. I know not everybody likes it, but sometimes it's just nice to know that somebody else has put a little bit of effort. It doesn't have to look great. That was the one thing.
3-color minimum?
3-color minimum. Areas have to be differentiated. So
let's see what it says here for painting. Okay, all cadres must be completely painted and uniformly based. No primer may be showing. Multiple colors must be used, and detail must be painted in a suitable manner to distinguish them from the rest of the model.
So faces should be a different color than armor, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. So it's not anything mind blowing here. The interesting thing was though is a simple fact that they have a format that does require painting. Now I hearken that back to the days of the say GW Grand Tournaments where they do require fully painted models. So to me it's not that big of a shock. It was really when War Machine came around and they were one of the first guys to really say on a more widespread basis, you don't have to paint your stuff. That opened a lot of doors for gamers, and it's not a bad thing. It's fantastic that we got more people playing, but it's nice to know also that that there are going to be events like this, official events that enforce that maybe archaic standard by some estimations of upholding hobby.
But Octave, even GW relented on that.
Yeah, they did, but I mean historically
like
they're.
The grand tournaments were, but by the time you got into the Ard Boys, I don't even think you had to have things fully assembled.
Nope, you just have to have bases for the models.
Yeah.
Because I've heard of people doing all the legs on the bases are my TAC Marines. So I will go ahead and this guy is a flamer and this guy is a missile launcher. Everyone else is just a normal dude if it's just a pair of legs. And that to me feels lazy.
Yeah, it's not a. It's funny because this is kind of a delicate situation, or at least in my experience, it's a delicate situation. Now, I run a lot of events. I host a lot of events, and I've never. I've yet to actually host a required painting event, although I am hugely in favor of it. You don't run a little group called Play It Painted and not be in favor of a fully painted event. Phil Howard has run a fully painted event for Saga. We felt it was appropriate for that because it's a historical miniatures game, and that is basically the culture standard for historical games, is that you play all painted. Even that caused a little bit of controversy locally. There was some outcry about, hey, why are you forcing me to paint things? And then so you get comments like that. But then you also get the one thing that often gets left out is you also get gratitude from players that show up to your events and say, hey, you know what? The fact that you forced me to paint my army gave me a deadline. It gave me a goal. I put my stuff together. I painted it. I had fun doing it, and I really appreciate it. And, I'm one of those guys that needs to be that you need to light a little bit of a fire underneath me to get me to paint something, but once I get going, I really enjoy it. So you get that as well.
Okay, I guess the thing that gets me is looking at the play it painted versus gray primer or proxy or half assembled. When is the last time you've ever walked by a new game and saw a bunch of people pushing around proxy bases and thought, oh my God, that looks so cool, I want to run out and buy that?
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
I mean, when you take the time to paint, yes, it may be time you're taking away from playing Xbox or playing WoW, or you may be taking a game night off to do it, but getting somebody to walk by and go, oh my God, what is that chick in hot pants on that robot? Because your one shot has stuck out. Or, oh my gosh, that Diamondback, or that big Fujimura pantsuit guy with the axe looks so freaking cool. You're going to get more players in.
Exactly, you're building your player base.
Think of painting as an investment in your community.
Great way of putting it. I think that was very well said. I will also put it in the perspective of somebody that's attending a very large event like an Adepticon. If I'm going to Adepticon, and let's say I live in one of the more remote areas of North America, and this is going to be like a very, very big deal for me, and I'm going to spend the weekend playing my favorite game, Relic Knights, and I want to play it for the full miniature
Relic Knights,
convention experience.
Shut up,
What's
Mark.
That? Oh, it's a tie, Mark. It's a tie. I love both games.
Hey, I'll take my small wins where I can.
What's that?
I'll take my small wins where I can. Eat it, Jillian. Eat it.
Hey, you guys know when I play one game, I play them both, and I post both pictures. Like, that's what I did tonight. It was awesome. But okay. But anyway, I'm back to my story of this made-up person that waited all year to get to Adepticon and play their favorite game, Relic Knights.
I can't think of anything.
Eldorado. And so they're going to play their favorite game. They're going to spend the weekend playing that game, maybe. Maybe they're playing in a 2-day event or whatever. They want it. They want that full experience. They want to have the more comprehensive experience of the game, meaning we're not pushing grays around. Meaning that I took time during the year to paint and assemble and paint something that I'm going to be happy with. And the guy across from me did the same thing. And to me, that really, especially for a convention experience, that really does tie it all together. Because you can get in a game with grays, like, at least in SoCal, you can, like, walk a block and go, like, yeah, let's play this. And the guy will break out gray models, and you can play your game, and whatever, that's cool. You can play it that way. It's a casual setting, whatever. But if you're gearing up for something like an event, like Adepticon, like a Gen Con, or whatever, break out the fine china. Do spend some time preparing, because that's part of the fun of going to a convention. If you ask me, is the preparing. Like, I'm gonna play this game. I'm gonna put together my list. I'm gonna put the models together. I'm gonna paint them a certain way. I'm gonna go for this particular style. I'm gonna choose the basing on those models. That's, to me, anyways, that's all very, very entertaining.
Yeah, you start building your theme in. I'm going to order these special dice because they match the colors, or
Mm-hmm.
I haven't done that in forever.
special shape dice. Or yeah, I mean it's a comprehensive experience. It's an immersion, and maybe you can get past the gamer stench if you.
You do breath really, really well. Oh, there's a trick to that. If you like grab Vicks Vapor Rub and rub some on your shoulder,
It's
you
a
can just
trick.
tear your face in that.
I thought you just went ahead and bought a case of mini soap and handed it out.
I've done that. It's the mini deodorants. I've done that.
All right. Okay, so again, one document has a painting requirement, the other one does not, and very cool. But I like that they stuck their necks out. I'll be honest, I like that. That's not something you see a lot in these official documents these days, and that's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
So okay, moving on to the rest of these two documents, and they are laid out the same way. They also have scheduling and timing. Again, nothing really mind-shattering there. 60 minutes prior for check-in for the day, 90 to 120 minutes per game, 30 to 60 minutes per lunch. This is all very standard stuff. I've been using for my tournaments. It's always been 90-minute rounds, and we always do a 45-minute lunch and a 15-minute break. Again, hope we're not, unless anybody has something really, really important to add there, I think we're just going to gloss over that.
Well, actually, Octave, do they call out the minimum rounds required for player sizes?
They do say that a one-day event should run 3 to 4 rounds. 2-day event can run 4 to 6 rounds.
Okay.
So they do actually call out some of that.
Okay.
Now here's the interesting part. So now we go into scenarios, and there is some divergence again between the two documents. In the Endless Hunger document, the scenario is determined by you and your opponent when you get to the table. So in other words, every table can be different when you are playing in the competitive environment. In the Establishing Order document, it says each game will use a set primary and secondary scenario that is used by both players. Faction conditions apply as normal. So in this environment, they're saying, well, it's basically one card for both players, and the ninja will be the guy to determine that card. I don't know how I feel about that because I've been running my tournaments a specific way. I guess for a new player type tournament, it's kind of cool to have a shared primary and secondary, just to help keep things simpler. But what I've been doing is at the start of the round, when I announce tables, I have people go to their table and then immediately flip hero villain.
Mm-hmm.
And then once everybody has gotten to their table and made that flip, then I will flip one card for the hero and one card for the villain, and every table will play those two sets of scenarios. And for me, that's been a way to keep things simple, but also play to the fact that in Relic Knights, your scenarios are going to be asymmetrical.
See, that bothers me. I'm not a fan of that. Every table is playing something different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, neither am I.
I would rather come
or not pay attention, but to keep track.
Yeah, I would rather come through and basically say, okay, round one, every hero is playing this, every villain is playing this. The other thing that I'm very likely to do at Adepticon, unless I am told that no, I may not do this, is at some point break up the color wheel for scenarios.
Oh, interesting. So you would actually allow non-paired.
Yes, at some point you might do corruption and chaos, and then law and. Now, of course, I don't have the wheel in front of me to tell, but just that.
So you could get
where you do 2 on the one side, 2 on the other, and then a set that's directly opposed, just to keep people thinking, so that you can't go into this going, I know these go together and here's how it's going to work. There's almost always going to be one thing that's wow, I didn't expect that. Now I need to actually give this a little bit of thought.
Imagine somebody trying to play, for example, Preservation of Life, which is the creation, and then getting Carnage as their secondary scenario.
Something that doesn't go together that's going to make them stop and think, well, wait a minute. I need to stop and think about this for a second because this is not normal. As opposed to...
Or even like...
yes, this is the standard 2 autopilot. We'll work this out. No, you actually have to stop and think.
Yeah, I like that. That's a cool idea, and I hope they allow that, because that would also enforce having a little bit more balance in your lists, in both lists.
Exactly.
In fact, so I like that. I like that idea a lot.
It keeps everybody playing the roughly the same scenarios, so that way you're not doing the only reason Octave won is because he flipped an easy scenario against Jill that he could dominate her, keep her from scoring any victory points and get the 8 himself, therefore putting him up in the winner's bracket. Had he played the same thing I flipped, I could have beat him.
Right.
It keeps some of that out. Now it's my skill against your skill in the deck of cards. It's not who got... Well, Jill happened to flip every single time the exact missions that she wanted to see. So...
yeah, and even doing like the single ninja flips the cards for everybody, I've noticed that's a little more balanced than having each table flip individually. Because the other thing I do when I do that is I don't allow repeat cards during the three or 4 rounds or whatever. I'll make sure. Oh, we already flipped that card. I'll flip another one.
Yep.
Just to make sure that people need to be prepared for a number of scenarios, and if they had a favorable scenario set one round, that they don't get it again. Favorable or disfavorable, I should say.
Exactly.
They don't get it in multiple rounds. Now, I will say this regarding the scenarios. One of the more difficult scenarios for most builds I've seen has been Grand Conjunction. Grand Conjunction is the primary scenario for Essence. So, for example, Doctrine, it's basically yellow as the primary. And what this requires you to do is you have to place a total of 6 different infused tokens on your primary and your opponent's primary objective. That's a lot of activations, and that's a lot of held Esper. So when you compare Grand Conjunction to a lot of the other primary scenarios, you can make the argument that there are a number of builds out there that are simply going to struggle with Grand Conjunction, and whereas there is one faction in particular that will perform fairly well at Grand Conjunction. Locally, we call it basketball. And there's much rage when basketball is flipped here in Southern California. So we kind of have a basketball rule that if it shows up once, that we make sure it doesn't show up again in the tournament. It does end up again for many, when you're playing in a competitive situation, you're playing for time, and you look at what scenarios are efficient to complete and which ones aren't. To lose a secondary isn't that big a deal at 3 points, but losing a primary and giving up on it before the game has begun, because you know that flat out it's going to take more activations than it would be to win in another fashion, that does kind of change up your meta a bit.
Well, then that's the benefit of having the ninja pre-select, because you can come through and say, I know this is going to be a hard one for the majority of the field. So I'm either going to include it in order to keep them on their toes, or I'm going to disallow it because I need these tables to stay in a straight line and not be flipped. It gives the ninja that benefit. And for new players, I don't know how many times I've read something at the table, and it's already, you're at a tournament, and there's always that stress, especially if you're doing well, that you feel like you have to continue doing well. And it's like you read something, it just doesn't make sense. As long as everybody's doing the same thing, you can ask the person next to you, and you're not stopping their game in order to get a clarification. It's just nicer for the tournament goer to have everybody playing the same set of objectives.
Absolutely, and you know, but again, it's I haven't tried it this way, the way that they're suggesting it. It's just what made sense to me when I ran my event. So I am going to try it, you know, according to the official document. But I'm still with you. I still think it's cleaner and easier for everybody involved if you know, if we do, you know, if we do either the ninja flipping the cards for everybody, or, you know, a predetermined scenario.
Well, especially if you're in an event where you end up with a rules packet to record everything, or a rules packet to, I don't know, I mean, make sure the scenarios are there for people so they don't have to, you know, have everybody with their rules packet out and their books out and all their cards out and their dashboard out. You can you can write it all up. It's in the rules packet, and people can refer to that and keep the table clutter down. Because at some of these big events, there's not a lot of table space.
Yeah, I shudder to think of, you know, we'll just say conservatively, a 24, 40-man, 48-man Relic Knights tournament, and having to judge 12 to 24 different sets of scenarios. That would be rough. Because every time you walk up to a table, you have to be, okay, what's your scenario? What's your scenario?
Yep.
Whereas if you flip it for everybody, you know, you're already, all you really have to look at is who's hero, who's villain.
Going in. When I walk up to that table, there's 4 possible things. Well, 4 set things, and then the faction scenarios that I can be. And
then another scenario too is, let's say me and Jill are playing in the tournament, right? And I'm like, hey Jill, I know you're doing really well, and I want you to advance because I'm not doing well today. And we flip our scenarios, and Jill gets Grand Conjunction, and I go, hey, you know what? That's not cool. Go ahead and reflip that.
Yep.
How would a judge know that that's what we did?
They don't.
You know, and so I don't want to argue this point to death, but as it stands, I'm just going to say that I'm not in favor of this particular note here. Okay, so got a comment from Larry. He actually wants to know how he can join. Larry, check your Facebook PMs. There's a link to hop on. You have your webcam set up. You should be good to go. So we'll see if we see you. If not, it's cool. All right. So moving along. Move along the document here. It does give some guidelines for a number of rounds. 8 or less, you should be playing 3 rounds. All the way up, if you're up to 128 players, you should be playing 7 rounds and over 2 days.
I should hope over 2 days.
Yeah.
We're up at 90-minute rounds. That isn't still terrible.
It's not terrible, but yeah, it can be a bit of a brain burn there. Okay, and you know the pairings they're Swiss pairings. One thing that is interesting is, and again I have to harken back to Malifaux here. Malifaux, their Gaining Grounds document for pairing. The first round would be random, that's fine. And then they would pair in place based on one of 3 different criteria. You could be playing a differential format. You could be playing a, I guess it's the Conquest or the tournament format, or you could be playing an accumulation format. So the most common would be Conquest, right? So 3 points for a win, 1 point for a tie, 0 for a loss. They take your tournament points and they pair you round per round that way. In the case of tied tournament scores, then they go on to differential, or they go on to the total accumulated victory points. That was the common way that they did that. It's not that different in this document. They have tournament points, which are different, though, between documents, and I'll explain that in a minute. But the way they do pairings is random first round, then second round it's going to be tournament points. So again, 3 for a win, 1 for a tie, 0 for a loss, which is slightly different in the casual play document. And then they go, instead of differential, they go accumulation, so your total VP. And then the third tiebreaker is actually the number of non-destructive scenario conditions that you've met. So that's an interesting one. So it's not it's not differential where if you beat a guy 8-0, that's a strong differential. In this case, they're not going to go by differential. They're going to go by, okay, how many scenario have you won? How many secondary objectives have you made? How many primary objectives have you made? And that's the third tiebreaker. I don't know how that will play out until we have a large body of people playing in one tournament.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see how that plays out. I think it's interesting, but I don't really have a I'm not going to say yay or nay on that one. But back to tournament points here for a minute. There is a slight difference. So for Endless Hunger, the competitive document, it's 3-1-0. That's not very different from many other tournament formats out there. It's pretty standard. For when you look at the Establishing Order document, they go to 10, 8, and 6. So 10 for a win, 8 for a draw, and 6 for a loss. It's interesting that they do that because those are softer differences. It also ties back to their overall game result formula, or the event result formula, which is 50% game results, 35% painting, and 15% player's choice. So there is kind of a soft sportsmanship. There's soft scoring involved in the casual document. Not really surprised by that, and I kind of like it, to be honest with you. What do you guys think?
I think sportsmanship should always be there. I don't think the people that play in our giant douche canoes during the game should be allowed to win. Because be friendly.
Okay, the problem I have. Okay, how are they scoring sportsmanship?
Sportsmanship scores in the casual event. I think that's a great thing to have in there, and it's fairly significant, 15% of your total score.
But how are they actually doing it, Octave?
Yeah, how are they determining it?
Let's get down to that part. There is. Now there is a player's choice, and I really didn't dive into this, but let's see. Player's choice points are awarded by receiving votes from participants in the tournament. There are 3 categories. No, that's the wrong section.
See, because.
Okay, so there are 3 categories a player may vote on: favorite opponent, best painted, or favorite cadre. Each vote a player receives is worth 3 points. No matter how many points a player receives, they may never receive more than 15% of the event point total in player's choice votes. So I guess it's hard capped at 15%, but you're going to be voting for players on 3 different categories.
See, in some ways, I almost prefer the system that the Warhammer Fantasy Battles players, I guess more or less in the Mid-America, have kind of done it. It's basically a sportsmanship. Does your opponent know the rules? 1 point. Did your opponent show up on time? 1 point. Did your opponent measure fairly and accurately? 1 point. So it's not a. Wait a minute.
It's not as subjective.
Yeah. Hey, Jill, Octave would win if you give him a 0 and I give him a 0, because we can totally do that.
Yeah, there's no favoritism against players.
At
Yeah,
that
I
point,
used
it
to hate
becomes
that.
are you stupid? Are you cheating? Are you unprepared? If the answer
Yeah,
is
I like
no to all those, you got 3 points. Then you might give 2 points for was this a good opponent and did they buy you a beer? I don't know. But something like that, where it's there are a certain amount of points where you know as a TO, if I see a score of less than 2, I need to watch one of these two players. Because either someone is being suspected of cheating, or someone is sandbagging the results.
Hmm. That's legit, and I've seen and possibly been a victim of that in some of the earlier Warhammer days, where you can be a completely pleasant person, good sportsman. And I only say this because my brother won all the sportsmanship awards, and I never won one. uh, but sometimes you win a game, and you might still be the coolest person there, or the nicest person there anyway. But the person that you're playing might be a sore loser, and he's going to give you a 0 on sportsmanship.
Yeah, or it's the,
Yeah,
oh
being
gosh,
airborne is the worst.
you brought, Haley 2, and I hate playing Haley 2. I don't care how great an opponent you are. I'm gonna dock you because you brought the one list I have trouble with.
Hmm.
At least if you come through and did they show up on time? 1 point. Did they have everything ready? 1 point. Did they measure fairly and accurately? 1 point.
Hmm.
Then
And
it
then you can,
becomes
like you said,
something
you
you
can
can.
supplement that with like a fail on it, which would be cool also.
Mhm. And then you give them a little bit of leeway for was this a good guy? Were they chatty? Whatever. But face it, guys, we're geeks. We're socially
Damn chatty
awkward.
players.
We're socially awkward as a collective. Usually, do we really need to be docking people because we didn't feel? I think it's one of the things that helps keep new players away.
Hmm.
Because I will not go to a tournament where there's a 0 to 5. Because since I have the hearing loss, I will always assume that I will be docked because I have to put every bit of focus into listening and playing the game. I don't have the extra brain power to interact.
Okay.
So as a new player, I would likely skip any event that didn't give me something for at least being a stand-up guy.
Sure. I think that is some of the intent here, though. If we go to prizes in the established order, prizes are to be decided by the ninja running the event. If possible, prize breakdown should be posted. But then they have some categories of prizes: best overall, best in faction, knight gallant. So the highest game total plus favorite opponent votes. That's kind of a cool category, I think. And then there's best painted. So they do break it up into a few different categories, possibly enough categories so that almost everybody, if not everybody, attending can win something.
Yes.
And I think that's pretty cool.
The thing I wonder, Octave, do they date this document at all? Is this the 2015 establishing order document?
It's not called out in the title, and I'm looking at like the page margins and that sort of thing. No, there's no version number, and there's no like express. This is the official rule set to be used during this year and this time. So no, they do not call it out.
Okay, I'll actually make a plea then if Deke or Ross or John or Kai or somebody's listening. Guys, go ahead and put that in.
Yep.
Because that at least shows that if something isn't working, that it's easier for the ninjas at that point to say, okay, guys, we're using the 2016 document. We're using the 2017
And that's
document.
it's been with a lot of those organized play documents. So I totally agree with that.
And that way they could come through and say, in addition to the book, scenarios, we will add in these 3 scenarios for the TO to potentially use that are officially vetted scenarios. They can change. So,
Cool.
That's just me.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I've done that with some of the other organized play documents, Gaining Ground, so forth. You have to call out what year Gaining Grounds you're using.
Yeah, it's just forethought. It's showing that you have faith in your own game that it's going to last more than a year. Be cocky.
Be cocky.
It works for me.
Maybe it's extreme cockiness. Maybe they're saying, "Hey, we'll never need to update this document. It's just going to be amazing forever, right out of the gate."
Okay.
I'm just kidding. I don't mean that, guys. The Ninja, whatever.
And I hope they are. I mean, I hope this is the legendary Ross Thompson rubbing off on the rules document. Although that would be kind of disturbing.
All right.
Choice of word.
So
Anyway.
we're going to move on to... Okay, so we did game results. Let's see, where are we at? Favorite opponent. Okay, so those are the sections that are in the established order document, and then the end of it is really just sort of favorite opponent, best paint, and so forth. The Endless Hunger is similar as well. One thing I will point out that stuck out in my brain, and I totally skipped over it because I wanted it to be kind of a separate discussion point, is the event points. So starting with Endless Hunger here, in the event point section, players need to score 6 victory points to win a game in Endless Hunger tournaments. When time is called, players finish the activation that they're on, and the game ends immediately. The player with the most victory points at the point is the winner of the game. Okay, but we skip over to Establish Order, and under that same section, it says, where'd it go? Okay. Game results. Players need to score 8 victory points to win a game in Established Order tournaments. And it goes through the same thing. So to recap, 8 for the casual event, 6 is the cutoff for the competitive.
A primary is worth 5?
5. Yep. So 5 and kill 1 unit.
So almost expect Cersei to be winning 35-point casual events.
Competitive events. That's the shocker.
Because I'm just
6
thinking
points is...
lap timer plus primary equals win.
Yeah, or secondary lap time and kill a unit.
Yeah.
So that to me was probably the most standout part of the documents. Was I was expecting 8, but I was expecting it for both the casual and the competitive play. I'm very curious, and I couldn't even venture a guess as to why they moved it down to 6 for the competitive version. It to me, and I that was my first thought as well, Mark, was that if you go to 6, the guy playing Cersei it may have a serious advantage there, especially if you play to 6 and every table is a random encounter. It's almost. I am concerned about that. I'm kind of worried about it, where that might go.
I mean, I have faith in the guys that if by Gen Con this isn't working, it will be corrected. But
and I plan on locally here in SoCal. I plan on playing these documents to the letter, to what they to where they're at, and hopefully make some discoveries or report some observations back to Ninja Division on this, because right now we're making speculations about what we think might happen, what our initial concerns are, but we need to get a little bit of experience behind that and see if our concerns are valid or if they're not. So yeah, that jumped out at me, and I was like, yeah, I really I want to see where that's going, because it's a very, very interesting um, cutoff there. So that said, I like both of these documents. I think they're very good. I was hoping, and you can let me know if there's anything you think that could have been included. I was hoping that they would make a little bit more distinction about terrain. Now, they talk about terrain in the general document, and it's a pretty good guideline. You know, one completely blocking piece of terrain per square foot, and they give some information there. But what I was looking for in particular was something that we house ruled here locally, was to say that if you place an objective in such a way that any model's base cannot physically make contact with it, or if you place an objective in contact with terrain, then the base of that terrain is also considered to be in contact with the objective.
Okay.
We house ruled that because there were some folks locally that were that got creative with how they were placing objectives, and that was they were considering that a strategy, and I guess you could argue that might be strategy.
It is.
My concern there is that if a strategy like that, in my opinion, overshadows the ability to play the other parts of the game, if it's overpowering those other facets of gameplay, then I don't like that in a tournament. What are your thoughts there?
I think it really comes down at that point to the TO. As a TO, you need to make sure that the terrain you're making and providing isn't abusable in that fashion. On the other hand, if you're, like I am, going into, in this case, an 8-table tournament with no terrain and a time limit, you can't always make that work. Now, the nice thing is I've already been told that Ninja will be providing the terrain at least for Relic Knights, I believe. So that leaves me needing to cover Eldorado at the very least, which I'm fine with. I mean, I think the nice thing about sci-fi, guys, is anything can go in a sci-fi game. You can be fighting over some backwater primitive planet using, ogre huts. But I think it really puts the pressure on the TO to make sure that they're thinking about, can a relic and a scenario objective go on this piece.
Okay. So yeah, that's it's a concern, but locally we've been able to mitigate that with a simple house rule. It's where it gets really interesting though is if you're one of those guys that you like to build very complex sets of terrain, and your emphasis might be more on aesthetic than functionality, then you might run into situations like that. So I guess I'm just putting this out there for other ninjas or people that are hosting events like this, is to be aware of the player's ability to make terrain work perhaps in ways you didn't intend them to. So be very clear about your terrain, and where you can't be clear, make sure that you are checking to see that it's behaving the way you intend it to.
And really, guys, I mean, if you're running an event and you've been in your community for any length of time, you should at least have a fairly good idea what your players are likely to do. If you know there's 2 or 3 players who are going to abuse it, then put out the house rule. If if your group is one of those who walks up to the Blood Bowl table and shakes hands and says, "Gentlemen rules, we're not going to use, illegal procedure," then you probably don't need to worry about them abusing terrain. So just know your players.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And if you're in any doubt, it's easier to put a house rule into effect that you're willing to enforce and never use it than decide not to use it and find out you needed it. It's your event.
Very good point. I like that. Very well put.
I mean, Deke and Ross aren't going to come run all our events for us. We need to be comfortable running our events. You can always scale back. You can come through and say, "I'd rather have 7 points instead of 6 because I feel that might be a better system." Don't be afraid.
Wow, we need to have that discussion because yes, I completely agree there.
Make sure you are comfortable running your event, because if you are not comfortable running your event, your players are going to pick up on that, and they are not going to be comfortable being there.
Yeah, and you don't want to look like the guy that's second guessing everything during your event for that very reason.
And the other thing, I guess, kind of off topic, but on the same general line, if you're a TO, if you're not sure of the rule, pick one. Pick a ruling, just be consistent. You can always come back later and debate it with the players. That's why you go out for beers afterwards. But when you're at the table,
you go for beers afterwards for the beers.
Well, but what I'm saying, Octave, is if you're there at the table, you need to be ready to make a decision and stick to it for the rest of that event.
Yes.
Even if you figure out the minute you walked away from that table that you knew you made the wrong call, you can't waffle on that call. So be willing to be comfortable in your own event, and your players will respect you.
Cool. One of the things I wanted to add to with the activation, where they say, okay, well, as soon as last activation is called, you finish your activation and then you're done. I amended that slightly for my tournaments. I go at a 5-minute warning, and what I've been doing is if I call 5-minute warning, essentially you play to the next villain activation. So if I call 5 minutes and you're on the villain's activation, that is literally last activation. If we're on the heroes, the villain gets one final activation, and the reason why I do that is just to make sure that the number of activations between players is at least even. There are also
some... mind almost on that having players run out their queue. Give them 10 minutes and just say, end your queue. 10 minutes. That at least gives players that last, oh crap, I need to know. There's only one way I can win this. I now need to do that, abandon the plan I'm currently on, and do the one thing I need. So.
I think that's a good idea. I could go for that. But yeah, what's been working for us is the calling out 5 minutes, and then everybody knows that they play to the next villain activation. So a lot of the stuff that locally we've been kind of building some rulings around are things like terrain being a big one, and then also slow play, or just making sure that there are an equitable amount of activations. So we don't have any deliberate slow players that I know of locally, but we have new players. We have other players that may be playing a little bit more of a denial play style. And one of the criticisms of Relic Knights, and it's one of the things that actually I think Cameron sort of pointed out here, is that you can play a denial play style, and you have ways of dragging your feet in the game. You have ways of slowing gameplay. You have styles that can slow gameplay. And in a tournament environment, you might compound that problem with things like rules disputes, You might have other logistical problems that could slow down the tournament. And for a tournament organizer, your pacing and your timing is a huge part of what you have to ensure for your event. Correct me if you feel differently, Mark, but I'm a big stickler for the pacing of the event and wanting to make sure that things stay on course and that players feel like they've gotten they feel like they're able to get in-game experiences even if they don't get in, quote-unquote, a full game. They need to at least feel like they've gotten in enough of a game to determine whether or not they're going to, whether or not that they feel that they should have won or lost a scenario.
Honestly, Octave, if I did an event or two and felt that slow play was going to be allowed, I again would go back to Privateer Press and institute the death clock.
Mm-hmm. And that has been discussed.
This is a 90-minute game. You each have 45 minutes, or or 50 minutes. The person who runs out their death clock, they're dead. Game is over. Of course, you need to decide, what kind of point differential and all that good stuff. But it ensures that everyone has a equal hand in the pacing of the game.
Mm-hmm. So, Jill, have you played in any events that have, like, War Machine events or anything that have used Death Clock or anything like that?
I have. I've played in War Machine events with Death Clock, and when I was playing as a new player, and I was terrified because when you hear Death Clock and you're a brand new player, you think, holy crap, I'm never going to win a single game.
Mm-hmm.
Really, though, after getting some experience with it and getting in some practice games beforehand, because I'm a player that likes to sit and think about what I'm going to do for a while, it has taken Grayson and I like 3 hours to play a game of Eldorado before, because we were just sitting and talking and thinking out strategies and whatnot. But
what? I'm throwing you out. You can't play my tournament.
All right.
Just kidding.
Fine. I didn't want to play in your stupid tournament anyways. But once I kind of played a few practice games and thought, okay, well, these are the things that I can do really quickly. This is something that I can do fairly quickly that works for this army and works for these scenarios, then you get used to it. So I think if you're going to be doing Death Clock or something similar to Death Clock, just let your players know so that if they are in the situation I was in where they're a new player, then they can get in a few Death Clock practice games and figure out, okay, well, my normal strategy of sit and think for 20 minutes does not work.
Well, but in defense of the beginning player, Jill, in a point where somebody's playing a denial game or wanting to run the clock, a new player probably isn't going to stand a chance against somebody who realizes they're playing a new player and they're going to be allowed to perform their denial strategy. So the difference between the new player saying, I need to learn this skill and get better, versus, wow, this game's crap, I can't win a single game because my opponents are all douchebags, it's huge.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, every single game of War Machine I play, after I've got the basics down, are either going to be time turns or Death Clock for my own mental health.
So you don't go bonkers?
So I learn early on to think during my opponent's turn.
See, and that's where I have issues. Because I'm in the same boat. Like, I try to think while the other person's playing, but I'm a thinker.
Well,
I like to think about what the hell I'm going to do.
Really?
Shut up.
Well, but it's kind of like Blood Bowl. It's
I'm with Mark because... I'm sorry?
It's kind of like Blood Bowl. It becomes prioritization. You go for your, this is a no-fail move. I can stand these guys up. I know I need to move this guy here. This gives me a little bit of time to now, I've done something, so now I know I have 3 minutes left to concentrate on these 5 plays and decide what is the most important play and kind of go from there.
We all know how good I am at Blood Bowl.
Blood Bowl is really where a lot of us, myself included, have kind of cut our teeth on the making time-critical decisions in miniature games. Blood Bowl really does put you in the crucible there when you're playing it.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually like being put under time pressure to make decisions during games. To me, it makes the game more exciting.
I agree.
And it teaches you priority.
Yeah. It teaches you priority.
Don't do the risky stuff first unless you absolutely can't get around it.
Mm-hmm. Just a comment here from DayZX. Now this one's a little bit late. I guess comments loaded a little slow. I think Ninja Division might not have dated the document as preparation for updating more than once a year until they are satisfied with the format. An update every 6 months for the first 2 years, for example. Good point. Yeah, maybe. But there should at least be a version attached to the document.
Yeah, it should say like version 1.
Even if it's on the footer, I'm a big fan of people coming through and putting that footer. So it gives the page number and the version number, because I don't know how many times I've had a stack of papers and the kid knocks it over or the cat knocks it over, and it's just that I was looking at 2 documents that are somewhat similar. Which one went with which?
Yeah.
And in the end,
and they actually did do that with Super Dungeon Arena mode. There are versions attached to those documents.
So in the end, I end up throwing them both away and printing new because, it's only a tree. Those aren't important, right?
Those don't make oxygen.
We can discuss that. I actually do agree with your sentiment. Due to paper mills and slow growth lumber versus fast growth lumber, but that's a totally different show and not worth watching, by the way.
It's totally worth watching. Everyone should watch that. I live in a logging community. Everybody should watch that. Even my documents when I put together packets or whatever for whatever events I'm running, I have to do versions of it because I might put up a version for discussion, and then I'll collect feedback from the players, and then either to incorporate or not incorporate that, and then put up a new version. And there's kind of an ownership, at least on these, at least locally with my play group, they feel a bit of ownership to what we're putting out, and there's no surprises when the event starts regarding what we're running. So, but yeah, very good comment. Thank you, DayZX. DayZX? I don't know if I'm saying that right, but okay. So any other comments on these organized play documents? I guess overall observations.
No, I think we're covered it pretty well, considering something that 2 of us have actually never seen.
No, I've seen it. I've read it. I just don't remember. Actually, I haven't read the Relic Knights stuff.
But Joe, you don't play Relic Knights, so it doesn't mean as much to you.
Well, and that's the thing. Like I said, I didn't read the Relic Knights stuff. I've just read the
and
other
that's
one.
the problem I'm having in Eldorado.
That's why
you're looking at.
I understand the words on the paper, but they mean squat to me.
That's why eventually you and I are going to sit down and go through the book.
I'm fairly certain that the tournament I'm playing in on Saturday will use some, if not most, of these documents as a guideline. So we'll get to see some of this in action. The main thing for me that's sticking out, though, is the 6-point win in the competitive side. That one, I gotta hesitate there from experience. We play 6-point games when we're playing multiplayer 4 players. If we put 4 players on the same board, we'll play to 6 because you don't want to kill yourself for one. Mm-hmm. And 6 points in a 1v1 situation is a short game. No matter how many points you're playing, it's a very short game. And I also do feel that with Cersei being able to score very quickly on some scenarios, that I am concerned that they may have an advantage there. But
Okay,
we'll see.
Does it mention at all a model cutoff?
No, I don't. I'll double check, but I did
Because
not.
I'm thinking, as we get closer to Gen Con, I'm going to make the intuitive leap that Book 2 will be at Gen Con with models available. Are those? Can I grab the models, say, I don't know, Thursday morning, run up and assemble them, paint them in the hotel, and use them immediately?
There is no timing cutoff. They do call out that Darkspace and Special Edition models are allowed.
How do they do that wording?
The exact wording is...
And do they mention ciphers?
I'm sorry?
And do they mention ciphers? There's one knight with 2 versions and 2 different ciphers.
No, they do not call out ciphers. The only thing that they say is that Darkspace and Special Edition models are allowed for Endless Hunger, or I'm going to get the name. I'm going to get it. It is Establish Order events. So, and it's the same phrasing.
Okay, because I know it's been FAQ'd that the knight has to use the cipher that it's packaged with, but it would have been nice for them to also put that in the document so that you can't have a Kisa player choosing the advantageous version of Scratch. Or at some point, if Suicide Queen gets her relic. So now you have Suicide Queen with Rolo and Suicide Queen the relic with Rolo, who's a different Rolo.
Super Rolo. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. And in fact, maybe they need to... Well, maybe that's something that needs to be addressed on the alternate cipher cards themselves.
Yeah, I mean, except at this point, it is addressed in the FAQ, just as Candy Heart has been labeled not Candy. But there's still some Darkspace questions of Suicide Queen is a knight, and Suicide Queen is a unique. Is that legal? FAQ says no, but not why.
I see. Yeah.
There's just a few places that I would love for them to come through and overthink things.
Yeah, just bring. Well, yeah, I don't even think that's overthinking. I think that's just. I think that's really just tightening things down. There are some. I mean, and we could do at some point, if we wanted to, we could do a show on stuff that we've encountered that we feel you could tighten down wording on.
And the house rule is also no open mouse selfies during my tournament.
So, yet another reason for me to go to Adepticon and take some open mouth selfies.
Do it. I will be there right beside you.
Did you just say you'd be there with the side boob?
I said I'll be there beside him.
Oh.
You would, your side boob. God.
We've played some Anima Tactics, have we? That game is the king of side boob.
It's so
I've got the book. I've never actually played it. I need to. One game at a time, sir. One game at a time.
But yeah, overall, I'd have to say I like these organized play documents. Still some open questions. We're gonna locally. We've got 2 tournaments coming up in the next 30 days. So we're gonna. We'll at least have a couple of data points coming up here. I know that Corey will most likely be using the. Damn it! I'm gonna get the name. Establish Order document. He will be using Establish. He will probably be using Establish Order for the tournament that we're having at a brewery, minus the painting requirement.
Okay.
So.
Did you say you guys are having a tournament at a brewery?
We are having a tournament at a brewery. Yes. That is how cool freaking SoCal is. And
why don't I live in Southern California? Why do I have to live in the frozen wastes of BC.
Yeah, and that was a deliberate attempt to draw out the legend Ross Thompson, and just get him to hang out with us for the day. And I'm pretty sure he's not going to have a problem coming and having a few beers and hanging out. So we've got that event coming up. We have the tournament Saturday. I'm really looking forward to that because I actually get to play in it, and I will probably get my face punched in, and it'll be hilarious. And I get to do that. Super fun. But yeah, we'll have some. I think at least we'll get some player feedback on these documents. I will forward those over to Ninja. I have actually been sending them some of my impressions from the events I've run thus far, and where I think there might be some. I look at it as cleaning up, you know, and for those of us who have been around for version 1 of miniature games, we know that there have been many, many worse sins than what we're seeing in Relic Knights. I would say, all things considered, Relic Knights as a V1 is a pretty solid rule set. But
all my criticisms, I mean, guys, are not. I really hate this. It's just more. When you love something, you want it to be the best that it can be.
Absolutely, yes.
Sometimes you need to, push it a little bit to help it become what it needs to be.
Yeah, well, you're going to have a very valuable data point next year, and you'll be able to collect a lot. You'll have a much more geographically diverse player base.
At least we hope so.
Pull from.
At least we hope so.
Oh, you should.
Yeah.
I think you should.
Yeah, and they're all.
I love Chicago.
They're all one-day events. Chicago is fairly easy to get to.
Unless you live in BC. Then you just have to fly a million miles.
Yeah, but you're doing it.
Yeah,
And man, your arms are tired, right?
Yep.
You're a dork.
Especially having to carry minis on my back while I'm flapping. God, so much extra work.
You're a dork.
It's because I'm tired. I get increasingly stupid when I'm tired.
I'm not going to remind you what time it is here.
It's like 2 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we did have another topic, but we're not going to cover it because we're at about 2 hours. But I do want to just kind of primer it. We can. This is something we can maybe pick up next week. If you guys have thoughts on this, maybe hold on to them or post them on one of the Facebook groups as a thought. And I don't want to give away too much of the discussion, but the idea is this. The key question behind this is this. So in miniature gaming right now, there's this explosion of available miniature game systems. A lot of this has to do with the rise of Kickstarter as a
rant coming on. I feel the rant coming on.
Yeah. Well, no, that's why we have to schedule another session next week. We got to save up. But yeah, with the rise of Kickstarter and the relative speed with which these new systems are coming out and the diversity with which they're coming out, we are, as a consumer base, we are literally flooded with miniature games and miniature game systems. It's been my observation that the majority of us end up backing Kickstarters, buying models, or ending up in situations where, when it comes down to it, we might be using only a very small percentage of the miniatures that we collect and a very small percentage of the game systems we collect. So the question is, have we oversaturated the miniature gaming player base, and what do you think will come of all of these systems that are hitting us, that seem to be hitting us, about a half dozen per week? So it's something I'm calling gamer saturation, and it's just more of a food for thought type question. You can rant if you want, Mark, but we're going to ask that you do that next week.
Okay.
because I think it's an interesting topic. I've already had a few cursory discussions with people that, like myself, play and support a number of game systems simultaneously. And with Ninja Division sort of at this point being we've got at least 4 miniature games to support. This becomes a more and more relevant question. So, anyway, that's the preview for next week. Do you guys have anything else to add here for this week's discussion?
I have nothing to add to the discussion.
All I can say is go check out Geek Girl Weekly, geekgirlweekly.com. Question nights, we had Miss Elizabeth Beckley from Cool Mini or Not, covering a nice range of random painting topics, honestly.
I like that.
From basically, if you've got your Arcadia Quest or Forgotten King coming and you don't paint, and you're now looking at this huge ass pile of miniatures, where do you start? To just improving your skills. It is a wonderful topic, and it was a great interview. So
cool. Yeah, I love listening to other painters describe their process, and I'm of the opinion that if you paint with somebody, you paint with anybody, you're going to learn one thing from them. So I'm always a big fan of more paint-related talks and whatnot. Anyway, before we sign off, I'm just going to show off the night's work here. This is Darkspace Rin Farah. No, I did not freehand little stars on her bikini top. I wanted to.
Okay, I do want to implore people, if you're, like I said, into RPGs, crown.geekgirlweekly or crown.question nights by guest, please check out Seventh Crown. Brian is a awesome guy.
And it's a really cool system.
And he's done quite a lot for the gaming. More than likely, he has touched whatever game you play. So, it's time to get back.
Cool. I'm done what I was painting as well. I just have to slap her on the base.
That looks fun. I like it. Looks like a very fun model to paint.
Yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, that's going to be it for this episode, guys. Thanks for watching, and we will catch you on the next one.